On Saturday night, President Barack Obama spoke to the last remaining group in the United States that is legally treated as second-class citizens. And in our third story on the countdown, the president promised gay rights advocates that he would end the military's don't ask, don't tell policy. But to the disappointment of many of his supporters, he offered no timeline for stopping that ridiculous practice. Before 3,000 guests at the annual Washington dinner of the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest gay rights organization, the president said that he did not expect advocates to be patient on the vital issue of basic human rights. And the president took the opportunity to repeat campaign promises.
We are moving ahead on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We should not be punishing patriotic Americans who have stepped forward to serve this country. We should be celebrating their willingness to show such courage and selflessness on behalf of their fellow citizens, especially when we're fighting two wars. So I'm working with the Pentagon, its leadership, and the members of the House and Senate on ending this policy. Legislation has been introduced in the House to make this happen. I will end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That's my commitment to you.
But the president offered no timeline or deadline on that. Nevertheless, the Human Rights Campaign, in a statement, welcomed the full embrace and commitment of the president. The only other president to speak to the organization was Bill Clinton, the author of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But other gay rights advocates have noted President Obama's foot-dragging on key issues, including the repeal of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act. The weekend's events were tied to Sunday's March on Washington. The National Equality March drew tens of thousands of gay rights supporters, including many who pointedly identified themselves as heterosexuals who were tired of witnessing intolerance toward their friends and family members. The focus of the march was a push for national rather than piecemeal legislation. The co-chairman of the march saying, quote, "We're not settling. There's no such thing as a fraction of equality. We want equal protection under the law." But the march also coincides with key votes that are coming up in Washington, D.C. and Maine on same-sex marriage. Let's bring in activist and columnist Dan Savage, author of The Commitment, Love, Sex, Marriage, and My Family. Good evening, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Even recent public opinion polls are way ahead of where the politicians are on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So this particular problem that the president has of still holding on to this military, this crazy military procedure, how long can he do that in the face of a public that's willing to make this change?
Well, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is a law passed by Congress and signed by Bill Clinton. The law has to be repealed by Congress, and the repeal has to be signed by Obama. In the interim, however, Obama could issue an order suspending enforcement of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a stop-loss order. He has the authority as the commander-in-chief, and 78 members of Congress sent him a letter asking him to do just that while they work on rescinding it. We're discharging gay and lesbian service members at the rate of 2 a day. Arab linguists, people we need in the forces right now while we're fighting these two wars. And so a lot of people in the gay and lesbian community, the activist community, think it's terrific that Obama is willing to repeat and repeat and repeat his campaign promises, but we want to see some action. And he made promises about the Defense of Marriage Act, about the HIV travel ban, about gay and lesbian people adopting. There are a lot of promises that he made to the gay and lesbian community. This is the one where he can show that he's sincere by taking action now and suspending the enforcement of Don't Ask, Don't Tell now, just like Janet Napolitano, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, has suspended enforcement of the widow's penalty. It's this issue and really the HIV travel ban, which the administration's dragging its feet on rescinding, where they can show that it's not just talk, that they intend to follow through on these promises.
Dan, I've noticed on health care reform this year that the Obama administration's strategy seems to be first check what the Clintons did, then do the opposite. Is this an instance where the Obama administration is looking at the problems Bill Clinton got into early in his administration by getting caught up in this issue, and so they've decided we're not going to do that in year 1, we're going to do that in year 3 or year 2 or year 4?
Well, we have no guarantee. there's no guarantee that in year 2 or 3 or 4 that they're going to have the majorities in Congress that they have right now. You know, next year we're going to be told it's 2010 and we're facing midterms and we can't act on this right now. And then in 2011 we're really into the re-election campaign. And then when are they going to act on these promises? You know, there's a lot of old Clinton hands in the White House, and they think it's still 1993. They need to look at the polling data. It is not 1993 on this issue anymore. Broad majorities, really supermajorities of the American public support the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, would support the president in suspending its enforcement, including broad majorities of conservatives, independents, even weekly churchgoers. This is really low-hanging fruit, if I can use that expression in the context of this conversation. And the president should reach for it and do it now and prove that this promise and all his other promises to the gay community aren't just a lot of hot air, but really actions he intends to take.
Now, Barack Obama is only the second president to address the human rights campaign, Bill Clinton being the first. I mean, surely it's better to have a president who is willing to come and talk and address the issue than a Republican president, for example, who would never even come close to it. At what point does the feeling of you know, good cheer and support of President Obama's election and his administration turn into something negative, turn into anger in this community?
Well, it's already turning into anger. You saw that anger in the streets. And it's really not a perfect sort of division. There were people at that dinner who cheered the president and cheered his words, who also marched the next day and marched past the White House and carried signs and banners. But there is really kind of a Stonewall 2.0. There really is a growing division in the gay community about tactics. You know, we've played nice. We've gotten along to get along. We've allowed the Democratic Party to cash our checks and accept our votes and then tell us to our faces once they're in power that they really can't act right now, that they need to worry about preserving eternally their majority and never using their majority. Well, what's in it for us, this majority? Why should we support the Democratic Party in the numbers that we do if you're gay or lesbian, if there's never any follow-through from the Democratic Party on the promises that are made to us every 2 and 4 years?
Author and activist Dan Savage, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.